you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Hey folks, you are joining me live right here on my YouTube channel tonight for the Intrepid broadcast live with me, your host, Scotty Roberts. It is Wednesday night. It is what's the date anyway? June 23rd in the year of our Lord, 2021. And come on over to Odyssey Radio and check out Odyssey Radio and all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio. All the times where you can see this show broadcast over on the schedule. That's at odysy1.com. Come on over to Odyssey Radio. And those of you who are here already know you're here, but anybody else watching later, this show is being broadcast live tonight over on my YouTube channel. And that's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And Doug Stack over there in the chat room, I have no idea where everybody is. It's kind of quiet in there tonight, isn't it? Not sure why. It's just one of those nights. It happens. There's more people watching, but they're not all in the chat room. So welcome, Doug. Good to see you. Hope your day went well. Hope your day with your new business, Mr. Entrepreneur, is going well. By the way, anybody who comes in and wants to come over to the channel and join in the chat, there is the link. It's over in the chat room, and you can add to the fray if you so desire. Hey, Matt Finn. Master Finn is here. Good to see you, brother. And as people start to filter in, we'll say hello. I just came in from being outside weed whacking. Now, it's awfully darn dry up here right now. And we have, I didn't even adjust my lights or adjust anything here. My kids get on my desk all day and they mess everything up, as much as I love my children. Just everything's a little bit out of place. Cords are all wrapped around other cords. Look at this. This is all on my desk as of right now. That's not a vibrator. That is a charger for a phone. See, I keep my cords all like this, all kind of wrapped up on my desk like that so they don't get all tangled. But there's a pink one, there's a gray one, there's 2 white ones, and several black ones all of a sudden all tangled up on my desk. So that's the way I walk into my desk some days if I don't come in ahead of time. I came in about 30 seconds before we got rolling tonight. So there it is. Doug said he closed today at noon to get things done with the City Hall stuff. Man, I hear you. That's that stuff that's always there. City Hall always has to be taken care of, doesn't it? And Morgan Snow says, howdy, everyone. Matthew Sainsbury is here. Good to see you, brother. From down south, way down south, below the Gulf of Mexico. And who else? We got Durwood. Good to see you. Mr. Durwood, I'm doing fantastic, and I hope you are as well. And so people are coming in. You know, I have some minor complaints from people when I do politics on this show. And tonight is going to be no different. It's not going to be a show about politics, but that doesn't mean I don't from time to time have to mention certain things about politics. Not politicking per se, but talking about things. And some people, oh, that's politics. That's our country. If you're from the United States, it's current events, it's civics, it's what drives us. It drives us. That's not the way I wanted to say that. It is what goes on around us, drives the world in our country. Reading about current events, talking about them. This show exists because of what some people would say is politics. Those are my roots. As a matter of fact, was going back to politics and doing political talk shows. And so every now and then I come in and I have to do some politics for things that bother me. And DeSantis today, the governor of Florida, is passing, I don't know if he proposed it or if he passed civics law. Let's see how this comes up. Let's see, legislation to set the pace for, it's in his education bill, and it was something that he said. Here it is. Ron DeSantis, and this is on, it looks like his own, it's floridagov.com. So it's a government of Florida site. And DeSantis, if you didn't know it, big supporter of Trump, and Trump is a big supporter of him. Conservatives are a huge supporter of Ron DeSantis and the governor of Florida, because he is coming out and he doesn't really care what anybody has to say about what he's doing. And I have a feeling if somebody tried to pull a fast one on him, he'd say, hey, shut up. We got this figured out. And so you need to tamp down your politics, Doug Stack, because of the business. Oh, man, I hear that. I run a business, too. My own daughters warned me several years ago, Dad, you got to stop talking about politics. Otherwise, people won't use your business. And it's like, well, some people won't. I understand, Doug. You're open to the public, and I appeal to different people. I had people telling me they thought because I voted for Trump that's why we never got our TV show picked up or off the ground. And I said, that's a bunch of hooey. That's not why that happened. So yeah, he's a boss. All right, Matt Finn. But Governor Ron DeSantis, he signed legislation to set the pace for civics education in America. Ron DeSantis signed HB 5 and SB 1108 and HB 233 that will collectively strengthen civics instruction and civics literacy education in Florida's kindergarten through post-secondary public schools. And he said, I'm proud to sign 3 bills today that prioritize civics education in our schools. And the sad reality is that only 2 in 5 Americans, get this, folks, only 2 in 5 Americans can correctly name the 3 branches of government. Can you do it right now? What are the 3 branches of government? Without Googling it. You should know this off the top of your head. Our school kids should know this off the tops of their heads. What are the 3 branches of the United States government? Do we know what they are? I can tell you right now. Well, not because I have stuff up in front of me, but because I know. What are those? Hey, Pyramid 7, good to see you. And so, by the way, for anybody drifting in, this is not politics. This is civics. This is current events in the United States. We have so many undereducated people back here. So, yeah, we need to bring economics back to school, too. Doug Stack, exactly. Well, in case I haven't seen anybody type it in yet, but I know everybody knows, 3 branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. So there you go. Hey, David Potter, good to see you, brother. Glad you came in. And so let's see. What does he say? DeSantis said the sad reality is that only 2 in 5 Americans can correctly name the 3 branches of government. And more than a third of Americans can't name any of the rights guaranteed by the First Amendment. And by the way, folks, did you know that our Constitution doesn't give us anything? It doesn't give us rights. The Constitution guarantees the protection of what is referred to as our God-given rights. These are our rights, and the Constitution stands to defend and protect our rights. So, it's abundantly clear that we need to do a much better job of educating our students in civics to prepare them for the rest of their lives. DeSantis said, "My thanks to Representative Zika," who they named a virus after. No, they didn't actually. But Representative Rizzoni names the people that have helped him out with this. And he said it's going to ensure that our students get an incredible civics education in the state of Florida. He said, "I also want to thank President Simpson and Speaker Sprowls for making this important legislation a priority. And civics education is an extremely important component of a student's educational journey," said Commissioner of Education Richard Corcoran. "A well-rounded civics education that also includes an opportunity for students to participate in the Florida Civics and Debate Initiative gives these students an increased chance of meeting or exceeding college readiness benchmarks," and so on. And on they go. And this whole thing, there was a big thing I saw the other day that DeSantis was saying he is signing into law civics legislation that will also include teaching school kids that totalitarian regimes are wrong and that socialist communism is a wrong form of government. This is part of the curriculum that's going to be taught. And yeah, Durwood, you're absolutely right. The left's going to make it into a thing about racism, I'm sure. Hey, Alan Stiles, good to see you. Glad you came in. Executive, legislative, and judicial. There you go, Dave Potter. There it is. Bing, bang, boom. You too, Matt Finn. And so, you know, the thing, man, the thing. Come on, man. And so, yeah, Homer got elected. Simpson. So that is a good thing that's going on. I happen to think that Governor DeSantis is going to be, I'd heard one pundit put it this way, with all the Trump supporters still out there on the right, you might find Trump throwing his support in behind DeSantis. And you might find, or they'll run together. Who knows? But DeSantis, I think, is one of those shining stars that's going to come out on the right to challenge what's up there now. And so this is a very good thing. And by the way, he also is against, DeSantis is legislating out critical race theory in the schools. Does anybody here know what critical race theory is? And by the way, and I'm going to keep saying this, I'll say you'll hear me say it a couple more times. If you're coming into the show and you're hearing me talk about things about government, things about legislation, things that are going on in current affairs around us now, it's because they're important things, not because I'm politicking. Although you can tell what my politics are. This is all about talking about what's going on in our country around us. So I'm looking at this article. This is on Yahoo Life. And it says, what is critical race theory? We asked some Republicans to see if they knew. And they open their article like this. Donald Trump may no longer be president, using his platform to spread racist rhetoric and lies about marginalized communities, but Republicans are still capitalizing on the culture wars that came out of his administration. This shows you one thing I noticed about Yahoo through the entire Trump presidency. An organization like Yahoo is extremely and vociferously leftist. And if you like leftism, that's your place. You can go get your news there. But something I found is that they capitalize. I never saw a complimentary article of the president during Trump's administration that was favorable of anything he ever did. And if any of you know of one from Yahoo, please let me know. This is part of the proselytizing of places like of the big tech corporations out there. So and that goes on and on and on and on and on. So I'm very proud of Governor DeSantis for his stand on things. And Beth Kirkham, good to see you. I don't think I've seen you here for a while. You may have been here and I just haven't noticed you. No offense. So, yeah, Yahoo kind of says it all. There it is. So I used to like Yahoo, but not since they came out and they took sides in the last presidency, the last administration, and the elections. And hey, beautiful.
Hi.
Come over here for a quick minute and say hi.
Pissy, and I hate our kids.
I know, but come on over and say hi. Who wants Rainey to come and say hi?
Nobody wants Rainey to come and say
Oh,
hi.
look, they're all saying they want you to come and say hi.
Well, they can bite me.
They can bite you. That's a response I got on something today too. So she's going to step over here for just a moment to say hello because she's in the studio and she's looking for something right now. But when she's done, we'll see. Hi, Rainey, says Doug Stack. There's a bit of a lag here between the broadcast and people in the chat room. So Doug Stack says hi, Rainey.
Hi.
And he put pink hearts and stuff up. Barbie D put up the pink hearts. Beth Kirkham says hi to Rainey.
Sure.
Matthew Sainsbury says hi to Rainey. Dave Potter says, hey, Rainey. And so Rainey was out working in her garden tonight, and she made me weed whack earlier. So I get to whack the weeds all day.
You like that sunburn? You can see, woo, bright cheeks and nose.
Oh, yeah. From your sunglasses being on? Yeah.
Right. So I'm in the process of doing something and yelling at kids at the same time. So I'm
go do it.
Do what I was doing.
Go do it. I love you. Bye.
Putting my wind chimes back together.
Okay.
Yeah, bye. Have fun.
Yeah, bye.
Yeah, bye.
Close the lid when you go out. All right. So there's the beautiful, vivacious, luscious, wonderful Rainey, and who chose to take my name instead of keeping her own. She's an Olsen, by the way, a very common, but her, I think it's more of a Finnish. I want to say Finnish. Finland is where they're from, her family. But Rainey's got all kinds of stuff in her. She's got Native American. She's got other things. So there you go. But she's an Olsen, and she's now a Roberts, and she has been for 15 years. So there you go. I whacked it good, Ryan Gale. I took down those weeds. I took out all my angstiness on the weeds. So there you go, folks. That's all we're going to talk about government tonight. And don't anybody misinterpret when I talk about government or politics. I'm not politicking. Although you can very clearly know where I stand politically. But I think it's important for some of us to know what's going on out there. And so I applaud DeSantis for standing up for teaching our kids civics in Florida schools. And I hope that catches on all around the country. Civics is necessary. So what's everybody saying? McFree, good to see you, Michelle. Nice to have you in here tonight. Juliatica, I don't know if I just said hi or just read that and thought I did because I'm talking so fast and going by everything. And and Ryan Gale, I did say hi to Ryan. Good to have you in here, brother. So let's start looking at our topic for tonight. It's all about, I wanted to hit on the gods of Egypt, and this may take a while. Because not only do I just want to go through a textbook list of the gods of Egypt, but I want to talk about why I think they were created. And now there's a big question here. And let me start out by asking you this question, which is going to back this way off of the gods of Egypt for a moment. But I want you to think about this for a minute. Ryan and Dave, I talked to you guys quite a bit about these things. And so you might have some input on this, and everybody else too. Ryan and Dave, by the way, are my friends, folks, up here, personal friends. And that's why I probably talked to them more than I've talked to most of you. But do you think we have this thing when we look at a topic of the deities or the gods of Egypt, and we say that these gods were created for the purpose of explaining natural things to the people? Well, it was this god who did that, or that god who did that. And they were used to explain why things existed the way they did. The war between the gods that took place in Egypt. Constant war between the gods. To use a perhaps to some people more unsavory, but only because it's not something you talk about much in public. I think it's a funny topic. It's a great topic. But remember the god Min? And I showed him here. He's the god that had the huge erect penis. And people thought that was a joke, those little statuettes that Rainey was selling. Well, they were little ones and they're big ones and so on. But the erect penis was enormous. Now, the funny thing is you find those all over ancient temple carvings in Egypt. The god Min standing there with a huge erection. And there was a story that he was led to masturbate and ejaculate all over cabbage. And there was a purpose for this. And then there was outcomes and all of this. So that's why he's always shown with the erect phallus. So you say, why would they have a god like this? Why would they create a god like this? Why do you see this guy with a huge boner on all these ancient 3,000 to 4,000 year old temples in Egypt? They're everywhere. And in Greece as well, said Matthew Sainsbury. So gods were created to explain the unexplainable, says Ryan Gale, and to give people hope of the of what comes after death. And you know what, Ryan, I think you're absolutely right. That we had to create gods. So let me ask you, the gods that you have believed in, if you ever did believe in them, or the religion that you've come out of, Christianity, we all who came out of Christianity, we all said that we believed in God the Father and the Holy Spirit and God the Son, and that these were the Godhead, the triune three. And in Judaism, of course, Jehovah, God, Elohim before that. And we have these gods that in Judeo-Christianity are very familiar to us. But did we create those gods in the same way that we say the ancient Egyptians created their gods? Or did some of these gods exist? In Christianity, we were taught that maybe some of those gods existed, but they were actually the demonic. They were devils that were there to try to lead people away from believing in the one true God. And they did this and they took on these personalities. So there is a big question out there that I pose to all of you. Do you think the gods that you grew up with in churches and denominations and so on, if you're pagan or Wiccan, those gods, do you think they actually exist? Or do you think we as human beings have created them for a purpose? Created them to explain, created them to control the masses, created them to give hope to people. Have you ever seen, this is going to sound really bad, and I did not rehearse this or think this out ahead of time, so I'm just throwing it out there. Have you ever seen the evidence of the actual existence of your gods that you choose to believe in? I was just seeing what somebody said. Interesting, Matthew. Oh, you're talking about the UFO lights. Okay. And we can hit on that a little later too. But let me ask you that question. Do you really believe in the gods that you say you believe in? When we say we believe in God, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, is that who you actually believe in? Do you believe I have come to choose the originator, as I've mentioned many times before, rather than even creator God? I cannot dispense with Jesus or Jesus Christ. I don't like to throw that baby out with the bathwater, but I find that there is something to him. Was he a holy man? Was he God? Very God. And these are questions we all ask ourselves. Let's see. I'm looking to see if some people had put some stuff. Not gods, but entities, said Morgan Snow. Let's see. I'm going to see if anybody else had some answers. Back to Ryan Gale. They were created to explain the unexplainable. So does that mean that gods do not exist? Are there no gods? Makes me think of the old Star Trek episode, Who Mourns for Adonis? Who mourns for God? The loss of him. Is God really there in the way that we were taught? Does he exist the way that we were taught he exists? Or have we subdued his presence? But he's still there. What if he really is the God as described in the biblical texts? Quite an awesome, powerful, at the same time, fearful God. Some scientists believe in gods, and that is a natural part of evolution, the belief in gods. I agree with you, Ryan, on that one. So in saying all of this, it's to give you kind of a little bit of a preamble of where I want to go with this tonight. And I started looking at the origins of the gods in Egypt. It's a collection of myths that describe the actions of the Egyptian gods as a means of understanding the world around them. This is what the ancient Egyptians did. It was a way to put understanding on, and again, I'm spacing on that word. I spaced on the word a while back, and then I hit on the word again, and I was talking about it last week or the week before. It's a word like etymology, but that's not the word. There is a word that means, it's an ology word, like etymology. It's a word that describes the source of gods. We've created miracles. We've created the supernatural to explain natural events that were otherwise unexplainable. Haven't I come before you? Have you not taken the bread I offered you? This is Dave Potter. That's it. So I'm no atheist, by the way. I just don't know how to plug in God the way I was taught anymore. So this collection of myths from ancient Egypt, this is how they described the unexplainable. They explain the unexplainable through the gods and the gods' actions on earth, the gods' actions in Egypt and with Egyptians. And the myths appear, and it was really an important part of ancient Egyptian religion. And the myths appear frequently in Egyptian writings and art, particularly in short stories and religious material, hymns, ritual texts, funerary texts, and the temple decorations. And these sources rarely contain a complete account of any given myth or any given god, and often describe only brief fragments of who these gods are. And it's more or less, it was in ancient Egypt, it was inspired by the cycles of nature. The Egyptians saw time in present as a series of recurring patterns, whereas the earliest periods of time were linear. And so myths were set into these earliest times, and myth sets the pattern for the cycles of the present. And present events repeat the events of myth. And in doing so, they renew Mat, M-A-'-A-T, Mat, the fundamental order of the universe is Mat. And amongst the most important episodes from the mythic past in Egypt are the creation myths, in which the gods of the universe, out of primordial chaos, the stories of the reign of the sun of the god Ra upon the earth, and the Osiris myth, and concerning the struggles of the gods Osiris, Isis, Horus, against the disruptive god Set, and events from the present that might be regarded as myths, including Ra's daily journey through the world and in the sky, and its otherworldly counterparts, the Duat, the gods of the Duat. And recurring themes in these mythic episodes include the conflict between upholders of Mat and the forces of chaos and disorder. And the importance of the pharaoh in maintaining Mat, or order, and the continual death and regeneration of the gods. Like I mentioned last night or the night before, I talked about Rick Riordan's young adults book, a brother and sister who are actually the son and daughter of one of the gods of Egypt. And they're living in modern day, and they didn't know that this is who they are. And it uncovers the whole tale of the wars and the conflict between the good and the evil, Osiris, Isis, Horus, against Set, and told in this new way by Rick Riordan in this story. It's a fabulous, fantastic novel for young people. If you want them to know, it's a great adventure novel, but at the same time, if you didn't know it, you wouldn't know that you're reading the whole story of the ancient pantheon of Egyptian gods and their conflicts. This is a great book. And so the details of the sacred events differ greatly from one text to another about these gods and these deities and these myths, and they often seem contradictory to one another. Egyptian myths are primarily metaphorical. They translate the essence and the behaviors of deities into terms that humans can understand. Each variant of a myth represents a different symbolic perspective. When Min masturbates over the cabbages, there's a reason for that. And we'll get to that when we get to Min, talking about Min. But there's symbolic perspective. It enriches the Egyptians' understanding of the gods, the world, and the universe all around them. And mythology profoundly influenced Egyptian culture. You could say that their mythology of the gods is ancient Egyptian religion, is ancient Egyptian culture. It inspired and influenced all sorts of religious rituals that provided the ideological basis for kingship in Egypt. Scenes and symbols from myth appeared in art, in tombs, in temples, on amulets, on shrines, and in literature, myth or elements of them were used in stories that range from humor and allegory, demonstrating that the Egyptians adapted mythology to serve a wide variety of purposes. It was also entertaining to the people. And the development of Egyptian myth is really difficult to trace, believe it or not. Egyptologists have to make lots of educated guesses about the earliest phrases or phases, and based on written sources that appeared much later, but had a much earlier beginning. The obvious influence on myth is the Egyptians' natural surroundings. Each day, the sun rose and set, bringing light to the land and regulating human activity. And each year, the Nile flooded, the inundation it was called. The Nile flooded every year, like clockwork. and it renewed the fertility of the soil, all that Nile silt coming down. And it allowed the highly productive farming that sustained Egyptian civilization for millennia. And so thus the Egyptians saw water and the sun as symbols of life and thought of time as a series of natural cycles. And so this orderly pattern was at constant risk of disruption. Unusually low floods resulted in what? Famine, drought. High floods destroyed crops and buildings. The hospitable Nile Valley was surrounded by harsh deserts on both sides of the Nile. You had, of course, the Sahara to the west, and you had the eastern deserts to the east. And then the Red Sea beyond those. And the Egyptians saw their land as an isolated place of stability, or mat, order out of chaos, surrounded by and endangered by chaos at all times. And so these themes, order, chaos, renewal, these appear repeatedly in Egyptian religious thought. And so another source of the deities and the mythologies is religious ritual in ancient Egypt. Many rituals make reference to myths and are sometimes based directly on them. But it's difficult to determine whether a culture's myths developed before the rituals or whether the rituals developed out of the myths. And so questions about this relationship between myth and ritual have spawned much discussion among Egyptologists and scholars of comparative religion in general. And so in ancient Egypt, the earliest evidence of religious practice predates all the written myths. Any evidence we have of written mythology, the practices of ritual predate those. Rituals early in Egyptian history included only a few motifs from a myth. And these reasons, some scholars have argued that in Egypt, rituals emerged before myths. It was unwritten. It was oral tradition. But because early evidence is so sparse, the question might never really be answered for certain. Which came first, the myth or the ritual? And, there's something I want to show you. I may or may not have shown this to you before. It doesn't matter to me because I'm going to show it to you again. I'm going to share my screen in a moment, if I can. We'll see it's dragging on me, and I'm not sure why. But in one of the little books that I've been writing and putting together, and this was our little platinum books, there is a 2-page spread. And I know I've shown this to you before, but let's do it in context to tonight's broadcast, our topic for tonight. Let's see, it's in the little book, How to Be an Archaeologist. And let's see, How to Be an Archaeologist. Here it is. I believe this is the... Oh, maybe. Maybe not. Maybe this isn't it. I've only got the artwork there. There's the art. There's the art. There it is. Okay. Now, I'm going to open this up, and then I'm going to share this with you guys on screen. And I'm going to give you an idea. This is some of the writing that I did for this particular little book on how to be an archaeologist. And I'm trying to navigate this stuff while I'm talking, and I sometimes get a little held up. Sorry about that. So let me go back over to my broadcast window, and I'm going to share my screen with you. You guys ready? Let's see. Let's get this going here. Share screen. Boom. Share. All right. Now, if you can see this, I'm going to read this to you. It's just a couple of pages from this book. But this is a 2-page spread, pages 17 and 18, out of this particular little golden or platinum book that we're putting together. And so there's my chat room. That's how I see it on this end. Sorry, I'm trying to expand this window a bit. Here you go. Now, this shows an archaeologist, and he's facing the stone carving of a face of a shrine that he has uncovered. And this is based very loosely on something that John Ward and Maria Nilsson did at their own site at Gebel El Silsila. They have all these shrines that were lined up along the river on the west bank of the Nile. And I went through all of these shrines and took a lot of pictures. I cataloged them. And there was one shrine that had been covered over by an earthquake probably 2,000 years ago. And they uncovered this shrine, and in it were 4 statues that hadn't seen the light of day for at least 2,000 to 2,500 years. And when they uncovered this, John did a little ceremony based on Egyptian mythology, based on Egyptian ritual. And he spoke the names that were carved in the hieroglyphs alongside the faces of this man and his family in this shrine. And by speaking the name, he was granting them life, giving them the life, the eternal life. So I wrote this little piece into this book. And over here on the left, it starts, it says, "You won't find it in books. They don't teach it in school. The universities won't break with their cardinal rule that says it's all science, just history, nothing more. They give you lectures and letters, then matriculate you to the door. But it's there in that moment, after years of hard work, of reading, writing papers, and digging in the dirt, that you find yourself breathing the air of the ancients. You've moved rocks, sifted silt, and now you finally face it. Eternal life, it was written, resides in the name. Remembrance and utterance is the name of that game. So you drop to your knees, assuaging your fears, and for the very first time in thousands of years, you gaze into eyes that shed only stone tears. Your fingers brush lightly on glyphs carved so bold, and there on the lintel, where in antiquity was told the story of this man now 3,000 years old, in the recounting of his life and his deeds of great fame, lay the resurrection to be found only in his name. His face to your face, your words to his ears, you speak out his name not uttered in years, and the statue before you breaks free of its bonds, reconnecting with life in the light of the gods." Now, that's just a 2-page spread from that particular book. And let's get out of this shared screen. And I'm going to stop the screen. There we go. And thank you, Matthew Sainsbury. It's going to be a cool book. It's not printed yet, but we're working on putting this one out. But the theme here with that book is similar to why I believe the Egyptians had their rituals and had their religious trappings. Yeah, it has a Dr. Seuss feel to it, Scott Allen. I wanted it to have that. It was supposed to be a lot simpler, that Seussian, if you will, edge to it. And you know what? Even this little segment of this book already drew all kinds of criticism, because I posted this picture up on some groups, art groups, and I posted it in an archaeological group. And I drew the criticism of people who their business is to criticize anything I say or do out there, and anything I write, because I must be some kind of buffoon because I put stock in spirituality. And so there were people trying to tear it down and so on, and I didn't give them the opportunity. I was like, I don't care. I don't care what you think. And so I put that up. And it has a little bit of a Dr. Seuss feel to it. It was meant to. And this little book takes you through the experience of these archaeologists. And I'm basing them loosely on John Ward and Maria Nilsson, but very loosely on them. But how they go through the education process, the getting their site, they're getting their archaeology is sometimes like everything else. It's getting the funding to do what you're doing. You aren't always funded by just the school or an institution. And then it takes it all the way through to this is what it's all about. It's the resurrecting the life. It's bringing that back. Now, I will say of my friend John Ward that he has his feet in both worlds more than many other scholars I've seen out there. He's got one foot in that scholarly world, as does Maria. And they have another foot in that, if you will, that supernatural world. As Maria said to me, the first year I knew her, 2013, when I had my experience, that vision at the tomb of Senenmut, of this guy back here. And Maria said to me, and I remember this to this day, I had this experience, and she is the scholar's scholar, the academic's academic. If you know Maria, you would know this about her. And she said in her beautiful, lilting Swedish voice, she said, Scotty, she said, I want you to know. She says, here in Egypt, I am a scholar. She said, but back home, I am a witch. And so, and she went and described some things to me about what I should do next after this vision. She said, I think you should go back down to the tomb and you should ask for clarity, which I did. And I don't know if it's right here. I'll read it to you. It may not be here. Or I may have moved it to a different show. No, it's right here. I've read this before, but this is, I'm taking a little side trip here. This is my journal that I take with me when I travel. It's full of stuff and things I pick up along the way and things I write about. It's got, leaves, things like this from Aswan, Egypt. It has this, and I've read this to you before. It's stuck in these pages here that I've written, and it's little bits of clips from the plant that I was told, without them knowing what I was writing about, that could have been the burning bush. It's a plant that they bundle this up, the Bedouin, and they throw it on the fire, and it never burns out, and it lasts for sometimes weeks. There's more leaves. This is from Egypt as well. This was along the banks of the Nile. Little things like this. So all these things are tucked into all the little nooks and crannies of this book. And when I had that vision of Senenmut, and by the way, in the back pocket, I've got all of this stuff from Egypt. These were all the things we did that first year I was out there. All the things I collected while we were there. There's no artifacts stuck in here, but all the different things, my little field notes folder, my old passport, which is now expired, and I've got my new one, and all my little personal trip here, but all my little stamps for Egypt and so on in my passport. And so all that is tucked into all this as well. These were my journals while I was there. And here's what I wrote that day that I sat in front of the tomb of Senenmut after having that vision. Let me see if I can find the right page here. Hang on. I thought I had it marked and I don't. Here it is. So I made my notes like this. And this is from January 31st of 2013. And then I wrote about a couple of experiences there. And then this was at the tomb of Senenmut. And this was February 4th of 2013. And First, though, and I forget about this one a little bit sometimes, on January 31st, wait, I've got something else written in here. Okay. January 31st of 2013, the Valley of the Nobles in Luxor. Now, this is all going to tie into the gods and starting to talk about the gods and ritual and the mythology of Egypt. But I was at the tomb of Ramos, the vizier. He was a friend to Amenhotep, the son of Hapu, who was John's candidate for his Moses character. I wrote here, I looked at a relief of Ramos, unaware that it was him. Flash of tears and a chill, just momentarily. Not tears of emotion, but of presence and logistical, proximal awareness. Then it was gone. Just a flash, I wrote. A few minutes later, I sat in the quiet in the outer pillared chamber of his tomb and attempted to clear my mind just to see what might come my way. It was very quiet, as you can imagine a tomb would be. Then a mental image in my mind's eye of 3 robed, shaved-headed priests in long white robes aside me, but not aware of me. Just a flash and then gone. Then, when looking at the relief of the man again, which I now know was Ramos himself, I saw him seated on a throne, then a man reaching around from behind with a golden dagger. No violence, with only the ever so slightest hint of possible malevolence to come. Then it was gone. John told me later that there is nothing about a violent end for Ramos. I'll need to mull this over to see if it's anything other than mental images and imagination. And I sketched out the little dagger I thought I had seen. So that was a little vision of sorts. Maybe it was just my overactive imagination that was taking place there. But there it is. Now, a few days later was when I had the vision with Senenmut, regarding Senenmut. And this is very short. Remember I said I came up, and when I had that vision, I was weeping. And it was Maria who said to me, Scotty, you need to go back down there to the tomb and ask them for clarity. She'd been around this block before. So I went back down and I sat in the sand at the entrance to Senenmut's tomb. This guy behind me, his tomb. And it's one of the tombs. He had left 2 unfinished tombs, unused, both of them pretty glorious. And so he was never buried here, as far as we know. He disappeared off the Egyptian scene. We have no explanation in Egyptian history where he went. So I sat down after that big visitation that I had, and I put down the date Tuesday, February 4th, 2013, at tomb TT 353. This is Senenmut's tomb. And I wrote here in the journal, I said, I'm sitting in the sand outside the unused tomb of Senenmut. Now keep in mind, by the way, I hadn't processed this thing yet. This was 20 minutes old at the time I wrote this. I said, I'm sitting in the sand outside the unused tomb of Senenmut. I stood in this little natural grotto and was overwhelmed with emotion. Not sure precisely why. Tears, many tears, ... I'm not even sure if Senenmut is Moses. Not even so sure that Moses even exists as I was taught. But someone is here Someone grabbed my emotions and I don't want them to let go. That's what I wrote on that day. And it's not a grandiose piece of art at all. It's nothing I would sell in a book, but I did that little sketch sitting in front of the tomb looking out at the grotto in front of me. So, in my journal, now I bring that up, and I brought that up as me trying to seek a spiritual answer for something that happened to me. And I didn't know if what had happened to me was actually a vision. Was it something of the gods, from the gods, by the gods? Is there a God that is at the core of the answers? I don't know for sure. But what this became for me was writing down my own personal mythology of what had taken place. And so, and we won't go into the whole story of that again. We'll probably hit that again, the visions I've had in Egypt. And remember, folks, I'm not given to visions. It's not my thing. It's not a going concern for me. I've never sought them out, but I had 3 of them that I can think of while in Egypt. And so the big question is it real? Was it? I know they really happened to me. Why did they happen? What's the reasoning behind that? Yeah, it is, Beth. This will be something I hope to pass on to my kids someday. So, moving on in this thing about Egyptian mythology and the need to create mythology. Did the myths come first? Did the ritual come first? Were there experiences like these that they had in ancient times? I can't imagine they didn't have experience like these before themselves. My experiences could be no different than the experiences that their own holy men, their own doctors of theology, and all of this in their own contexts had. And they needed to be able to describe what happened and what was happening in the world around them. Are the Egyptian gods like tulpas? Were they created out of nothingness and became substantive because the ancient Egyptians created them for the purpose of explaining the natural world and gave them life? Because people continually reinforced that life that was given to them. Is this why they exist today? That's a very good question. Anything about California falling off the coast into the Pacific Ocean? Taking the Chinese military with it, Scott? Not in this journal. I gotta tell you that. And none of the visions I have ever hit anything like that. It was all very personal stuff. Entities revealing themselves to me. I happen to think they were true and they were real. So, like myths in many other cultures, Egyptian myths really just serve to justify human traditions and to address fundamental questions about the world and the universe, such as the nature of disorder and the ultimate fate of the universe. And the Egyptians explain these profound issues through statements about the gods. Egyptian deities represent natural phenomenon, from physical objects like the earth or the sun, or abstract forces like knowledge and creativity. Those are abstract things. Draw a picture of knowledge and creativity for me. Draw a picture of emotion for me. So there had to be ways that they could illustrate these concepts. And the actions and the interactions of the gods and the Egyptian pantheon, the Egyptians believed to govern the behavior of all those forces and all those elements of nature. And for the most part, the Egyptians didn't describe these mysterious processes in explicit theological writings. Instead, the relationships and the interactions of the gods illustrated such processes implicitly. And most of Egyptians' gods, of Egypt's gods, including many of the major ones, don't even have significant roles in any mythic narratives in ancient Egypt. Although their nature and their relationship with other deities are often established in lists or in bare statements without any kind of narration. So for the gods, who are deeply involved in narratives, mythic events are very important expressions of their roles in the cosmos. But if only narratives are myths, then mythology is a major element in Egyptian religious understanding, but not as essential as it is in many other cultures. So the true realm of the gods in ancient Egypt is mysterious. It's inaccessible to humans. Mythological stories use all this symbolism to make the events in this realm comprehensible to the ancient Egyptians. And not every detail of a mythic account has symbolic significance. Some images, some instances, even in religious texts, are meant simply as visual or dramatic embellishments of broader, more meaningful myths. Few very complete stories even exist in ancient Egyptian literature. They're mythological sources. And these sources often contain nothing more than allusions to the events to which they relate. And the texts that contain actual narratives tell only portions of a larger story. Thus, for the given myth of the Egyptian may have had only the general outlines of a story from which fragments describing particular incidents were drawn. I cannot tell a lie. I did not. I chopped down the cherry tree, Father. Something like that. An incident, a happening, without greater context. So the Egyptian myths are not, therefore, fully developed tales. Their importance lay in their underlying meaning, not their characteristics as stories. And so instead of coalescing into lengthy, fixed narratives, they remained really highly flexible and non-dogmatic, unlike the Catholics who came later. And so flexible were Egyptian myths that they could seemingly conflict with each other. They were that flexible, they ebbed and flowed on their own. Many descriptions of the creation of the world are the movements of the sun that occur in Egyptian texts, and some very different from each other. And the relationships between gods were fluid. So that, for instance, the goddess Hathor could be called the mother, the wife, or the daughter, or the sun god Ra. So separate deities could even be syncretized or linked to a singular being. Thus, the creator god Atum was combined with Ra to form Ra Atum. And one commonly suggested reason for all the inconsistencies in ancient Egyptian myth is that religious ideas differed over time and in different regions. And the local cults of various deities developed all these grandiose theologies centered on their own patron gods. And as the influence of different cults shifted, some mythological systems attained all this national dominance. And in the Old Kingdom in Egypt, we're talking about 2688 to 2181 BCE, so we're talking quite a while ago. The most important of these systems were the cults of Ra and Atum, A-T-U-M, and they were centered at Heliopolis. And they formed a mythical family, the Aeneid, E-N-N-E-A-D, the Aeneid. And that was said to have created the world. We talked about, last week I made mention of where John Ward and I bumped into John Anthony West for the first time, coming out of Deir el-Medina in Luxor. We had walked a little piece across the desert for about a half an hour to get to this temple. And this is the temple that was built on the site that the Ogdode rose up, the creation of the world, the creation egg, and the Aeneid and all of this. So the Egyptians also overlaid old religions, old religious ideas with new ones. For instance, the god Ptah, P-T-A-H, or Ta, whose cult was centered at Memphis or Mennefer, ancient Mennefer, which is where, by the way, I believe the Exodus took place from, right at the mouth of the Nile Delta, about 30 miles from present-day Cairo. This was also said to be the creator of the world, Ptah. Ptah's creation myth incorporates older myths by saying that it's the Aeneid who carry out Ptah's creative commands. Thus, the myth makes Ptah older and greater than the Aeneid. And many scholars have seen this myth as a political attempt to assert the superiority of the Memphis god over those of Heliopolis. And so by combining concepts in this way, the Egyptians produced an immensely complicated set of deities and myths. And I see it's already 10:07. So I'm going to wrap with these thoughts on this for tonight. Egyptologists in the early 20th century thought that politically motivated changes like these were the principal reason for the contradictory imagery in Egyptian myth. In the 1940s, Henry Frankfurt, realizing the symbolic nature of Egyptian mythology, argued that apparently contradictory ideas are part of the multiplicity of approaches that the Egyptians used to understand the divine realm. It's kind of like the all roads lead to Rome thing, but this is pre-Rome. And Frankfurt's arguments are the basis for a whole lot of the more recent analysis of Egyptian beliefs. Political changes in Egypt affected Egyptian religious beliefs. But the ideas that emerged through those changes also have a deeper meaning. Multiple versions of the same myth express different aspects of the same phenomenon. Different gods that behave in a similar way reflect the close connection between all the natural forces. And the varying symbols of Egyptian mythology express ideas too complex to be seen through a overly simplistic lens. So there you go, folks. This is the basis. This is the beginning of what we're going to be talking about when it comes to all this Egyptian mythology and the Egyptian religion, the gods of Egypt that we're going to be covering. That's all I got for tonight. I got more. I could go for 2 more hours, but I'm not gonna. So, folks, let's see. Wesley said, if a grand witty storyteller tells a tale and none give attention, does a bear shit in the woods? Yeah, it's a good question. It's a very good question, frankly. So, there you go. All right, guys, I'm out of here for tonight. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for your time. It means a whole hell of a lot to me that you would give me your time to come in, spend it with me. So for now, I'm going to say, live long and prosper, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.